Great. Hi, everyone. Hopefully this is working and you all can see and hear me. Welcome to the WinUI community call, April edition. Thank you all for joining. We're very glad that we got our stream up and running and you could all join us today. So I'm Anna, for those of you who don't know me or haven't seen me. I know it wasn't on video for the last call. I am a PM working on WinUI, and I am now running the Windows community call. So let's just get into it. All right, so a little bit about the community call, if this is your first time, or if you just wanted a refresher. We do these on the third Wednesday of every month at 9 a.m. Pacific time. And the next call will be on Wednesday, May 20th, maybe. So that's the week of build. So we might do a special edition, or we'll see what we end up doing, just to make sure that, you know, we have our build. We just make sure that we know what we're doing for build and for the community call. As always, you can reach us on GitHub here and Twitter here. We love getting your bugs and feature requests on GitHub and talking with you there. And then on Twitter, we also love talking about that kind of stuff. So as for today's agenda, so I'm going to go through a little bit of an intro and the agenda, which I'm doing now. I'm going to go over a status report for WinUI 3. We will have a community guest spotlight, which if you follow me on Twitter, I'm sure you already know who it is. Windows Community Toolkit spotlight, which will be very exciting. Hierarchical Navigation View demo. We will have a demo of ProgressRing and of Radial Gradient Brush. And then, of course, we will end with Q&A. So, a little bit of background. What is WinUI? WinUI is the native UI platform for Windows 10. So you can use WinUI to build rich apps in .NET or C++ for Windows 10 devices. And it powers the Windows and Xbox operating system shell, and many apps, first and third party, as well as platforms like Xamarin Forms and React Native for Windows. So here's our timeline for WinUI. We released our alpha in November 2019, and then we released an alpha with WebView 2, which was a Chromium-based WebView, in February. And we are on track to release Preview 1 at Build, which is next month already. Time flies. And let's see, Preview 1 is actually the first version that is going to work in desktop apps. So that will be really exciting. And then we have open source coming up in the summer, hopefully. And then release to market WinUI 3 will be late 2020. And so you guys can see this presentation better, I'm just going to go ahead and focus on the PowerPoint now. All right. So let's talk a little bit about WinUI 3. You can find our roadmap at this link on our GitHub repository. So I'll just outline it for you guys here. WinUI 3 will have full support for UWP and desktop apps. Your app container for Win32 apps can be sandboxed or not. It's up to you. You can target .NET 5 and or C++ packaged with MSIX or don't. We have XAML islands for WPF, WinForms, and MFC, etc. And of course, down-level support for new features in Windows 10. So WinUI is really flexible, and it really lets you do what you want with the technologies that you're comfortable with. So our alpha is available now if you want to try it out. It works on UWP only, but you can access it at aka.ms/winui/alpha. And this is just a mini timeline in 2020. We have our WebView preview, our 3.0 preview, open source, and then release to market. And I just want to clarify, so we have .NET 5 for desktop apps in Preview 1, but not yet for UWP apps. So now I will give a little bit of a status report for WinUI 3. We have some very good news about Swap Chain Panel. It will be supported in Preview 1. Yay. So here is a video demo of it. Very exciting little rainbow cube. All of you can hopefully see there. And another piece of good news is that we are still on track to release Preview 1 at Build in May. However, the less good news is, as I'm sure most of you have heard, due to COVID-19 and the ongoing global crisis, Microsoft has announced that all conferences this year will be held digitally. So that includes Build. And we are still on track to release Preview 1 at Build. And I'm certain that it will still be a very informative opportunity, and it'll be full of exciting WinUI stuff. So although it stinks that we can't all get together in person, it'll still be an exciting time for sure. All right, so now I'm going to introduce our first community guest spotlight, Ginny, who is a Windows Development MVP. I'm sure a lot of you guys know her and recognize her face. And she is the president of Carolina Software, Inc. So I'm going to go ahead and switch to the Teams call so Ginny can share her screen. And you can see a little bit of our team here. Hi, everybody. Ginny, if you want to go ahead and share your screen, you will show up on the call.
Can everybody see my screen okay?
I think it's loading. Okay, I can see it now.
You can see it now?
Yep.
Okay, so maybe you could tell from the slide that primarily I'm an enterprise developer, but I like to try out new technology with something smaller. And what I did a number of years ago was I built this password padlock application for Windows Phone, and it's been in the Microsoft Store since the very first Windows Phone. That version was built with Silverlight, as a matter of fact. So eventually we had Windows 8 and I had to change the UI. And where we are now is in the production version, a UWP version that still runs on Windows Mobile. But it's a pretty simple little application that allows you to store passwords in an encrypted form. You can add passwords, you can change passwords, you can search to see if you're using the same password over and over again. For example, here I seem to be using it 4 times in this demo data. So when WinUI 3 came out in alpha, I figured I needed to get ahead of the curve to see about what this new UI framework was all about. Well, as it turns out, it's not all that different from what we're already using in UWP. So I'll show you basically the kind of code changes I needed to make. The first thing I did in converting to WinUI 3 from UWP was to download the physics from the WinUI 3 alpha site. And that gives you a Visual Studio template to create a new application that targets WinUI 3. So that's what I did here. Here's the production.
Hey,
yeah.
So it seems like the audience can only see the top left corner of your screen. Do you want to try screen sharing again to see if
actually, let me change my screen resolution as well. That might be part of it because everybody is seeing my screen. Sorry.
Okay.
Yeah, the cropping happened before Ginny jumped on, so.
Okay. So I'm going to change to this resolution. Then Ginny, why don't you go ahead and try again?
Okay, let's try that again. Can you see my screen okay now? Is it coming in?
So we can, it will take the live stream just a second here to catch up.
Okay. Well, I'll just talk a little bit about the process, and if somebody will let me know when you can see the screen, I'll show a little bit about what changed in the code. There's really very little that changed.
Sounds good. It looks like we're about 30 seconds exactly behind, and so we're now just seeing Anna's screen resolution change in the live feed. So why don't you go ahead and talk, and we'll let you know if there's any issues.
Okay. Well, the first thing I did was get the Visual Studio template so I could create a new Visual Studio project inside my solution that targeted WinUI 3. Then I gradually copied the code from the production version of Password Padlock into the WinUI version. And of course, it won't build because I had all of these references to windows.ui.xaml. I needed to change all of those to Microsoft.ui.xaml. And I did that using just global search and replace, which ordinarily I'm terrified of doing in Visual Studio because you don't really know exactly what you're going to get. But in this case, it worked out just great since that's such a different kind of string to be searching and replacing on. And with only a very few other things that I needed to comment out, I could get that application to build just after the global search and replace. Just build and then it would run. Are we seeing any code yet?
Yeah, Jenny, it all looks great now.
Okay, that's good to know. So it's just going to show a little bit about what looks different. In the code, you can see that everywhere that I did previously have Windows.ui, I now have Microsoft.ui. Microsoft.ui.xaml, .controls, primitives, and so on and so forth. The one problem that I did find at runtime, though, was in my view models. And that really surprised me because the view model code was the part that I didn't really have to change much going from the Silverlight version to the UWP version of the application. And what happens is that the collection support is not compatible between WinUI 3 and the current UWP application. But it's documented on the WinUI 3 alpha docs that the fix is actually inside the XAML controls sample application. And if you go and download that from GitHub, you can see this collections interop.cs file, which basically has what you need to have an observable collection and a notified changed event that's compatible with WinUI 3. So I just copied this from the sample, from the XAML controls gallery, and put it into my application, the WinUI 3 one. And then everywhere I had observable collection, I changed to test observable collection. For example, in this version, in the old version, I had observable collection, and in the new version, test observable collection. Similarly, I had to change, I notify property changed. So that it's now Microsoft.ui.xaml.data.unnotified property changed. And then I was good to go. I could run the application and it runs fine. So here's the version using WinUI 3 with really very little change except the ones I've just described, which frankly did not take much longer to do than it just took me to describe to you. So it works pretty much the same as before. In fact, I still have the one from the store running so you can see them side by side. And you can see that they really do look very much the same. They behave the same. The only major difference is now I'm adding new controls from WinUI. For example, here's this teaching tip control that I find is pretty cool, and I think it's going to help solve some confusion I've gotten from emails from users about what do you do to save, and it's not particularly intuitive that you tap the back button to save your changes. So I like this new control. So now I'm future-proofed. I really like what I'm doing. But my plans haven't stopped there because, of course, WinUI 3 is currently just in alpha. So I can't release this version to the store yet, and I wouldn't want to in any case because I'm sure there are more things I'll want to do with it later. But my big plans are to go back to the enterprise side, since I build it to actually make me money, and start incorporating WinUI 3 in those applications. So that's my plan once we are closer to a release version. Now I think with Preview 1, which is coming out at Build, is that right? I can already start playing with the desktop versions that don't require the UWP sandbox. So I'm very much looking forward to that. And that's pretty much all I've got, unless you've got questions.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Jenny. It's really good to see that, and always good to hear how easy it was to port it over to WinUI 3.
I was blown away how easy it was, especially having done the Silverlight to UWP version, which was quite a bit more work.
Awesome.
Jenny, we will have a Q&A section in the second half of the call. Are you going to stick around for that?
Sure, I'll be there. I might do a little tweeting in the meantime.
All right. Well, if anyone has questions for Jenny, feel free to let me know in the chat, and we'll be sure to ask them.
Perfect. Thank you, Jenny.
Thank you.
And I'm going to go ahead and share my PowerPoint again. Can you guys on the call see my PowerPoint?
Yep.
Awesome. So next, I am going to hand it off to Michael Hawker, who a lot of you may also recognize, or the XAML Llama. He is the Windows Community Toolkit maintainer and a senior software engineer here at Microsoft. So let me go ahead and go back to Teams. Ooh, not that one. And, oh geez. And Michael, you can go ahead and share your screen.
I was going to share it for the demo, but use your slides. Is that all right still?
Right. Sorry. Okay. Let me go
No
back
problem.
to my slides then. All right. So here are my slides. Let's get back to it. Here you go, Michael.
Great. Thanks, Anna. Really appreciate being here as part of the call today and giving folks an introduction to the Community Toolkit. I know a lot of them probably already know about it, but wanted to also share some of our plans for the year, so that'll be coming at the end. If you're not familiar with the Windows Community Toolkit, you can find it at this link here, aka.ms/WCT. It's really a suite of controls, extensions, and helpers for Windows developers. There's a lot of UWP stuff, but we also have a lot of .NET Standard, things for XAML Islands. There's just a smorgasbord of things in here, so it's always a good place to look for if you're trying to solve a problem, see if we have a solution that's already in the toolkit. We're part of the .NET Foundation. We're all open sourced and MIT licensed, so it's really been a huge project for us over these past 3 years. We've had 25 releases, closed over 1,000 issues, had 3.5 million NuGet package downloads, and over 10,000 commits by over 200 different contributors. So it's really been this big community effort. We have a lot of great controls contributed by the community that get a lot of usage now, and so if we move to the next slide, one of the biggest questions we get is why are there these two UI libraries out there, the Windows Community Toolkit, WinUI? How do they relate? How are they different? What are kind of the goals of these projects, and how do we coexist? And we have a great relationship. I'm here on the call with them. We're always chatting, and so we really kind of work in harmony for different goals of the community and the ecosystem to move things forward. The main differences are that WinUI is a C++ project. It's directed by the platform team for the needs of Windows itself and new devices. The Community Toolkit, on the other hand, is directed for the needs of our Microsoft partners and the community itself. That's my role as part of the maintainer of the toolkit. Our organization that I'm in works a lot with partners, and so we leverage the toolkit to help them as much as we can with their needs. And we're C# based. We see a lot of our community members are using C# to build their apps, so it makes it easier for us to maintain and work with them to contribute things to the toolkit and move things forward together. One of the ways I like to look at WinUI is it's a set of components that every developer is going to need to build every one of their apps. Whereas the toolkit, there's lots of different helpers and components. It might not be something that you need for every app, or you're not going to need every single thing in the toolkit for every app, but there's going to be a lot of there that you're going to be able to find useful and help you through different problems. So that's kind of where there's these kind of differentiations between the two libraries. Traditionally, in the past, WinUI has kind of been creating a big picture of what they're building. It's been kind of harder to make breaking changes because I think as Ryan had called out in one of the previous calls, you couldn't change the platform underneath an application as the OS upgraded. So you had to be very careful about how you made changes. Meanwhile, the toolkit, it's something people, we use semantic versioning. And so when we kind of upgrade our major version, a a little bit more frequently. We make breaking changes, but we note those, so that's easy for people to adapt when they need to. And then the other big thing is just that WinUI is owned by a team of Microsoft engineers, and the Community Toolkit is owned by the .NET Foundation. So just to highlight some differences, because it is a question we got, so I wanted to just touch on that topic. The great thing with the Community Toolkit, if we move to the next slide, is we have a sample app. Just like WinUI has a XAML controls gallery, we have a sample app for the toolkit. So it's really easy to kind of dive in, just download it from Microsoft Store at that aka.ms/Windows Toolkit app. We have documentation in the app that even works offline. We have a playground for most of our controls and helpers, and you can even live edit the XAML to try things out. And so I'm going to now share my screen and jump into a demo here. Grab the right screen hit to kind of raise awareness of the collection of tools that we have, and maybe if you're even familiar with the toolkit, there's some things in here that you haven't used before. So our Markdown text block is pretty popular. It lets you take Markdown and preview it, and so we can just add a header. Welcome to the community call. The preview of the text down here as we go. So so if you're working with Markdown, it's a handy component here, and we see a lot of people contributing to this, and it originally came from the community, like most of our controls. So we're always excited to see them get used and move things forward. We also have, if you're doing any sort of status updates in your application, you can see this little bar pop up down here. You can have buttons for questions. You can even restyle it, so if you want kind of the more Visual Studio Code look and feel, you can do that. And this was contributed by the community as well. So we really like to see these stories of these controls coming through, and the in-app notification is one that now has an issue on the WinUI repo about getting pulled into the platform. We've had lots of controls from the toolkit, like the tab view, for instance, move into the platform as we've seen the community show the need for those. Navigation view is an example on the platform. So we're always excited to see that story of something from the toolkit being adopted by the WinUI team, and we work closely with them to make sure we have a good path forward there for everyone. Another big part of the toolkit is we have animations. So we have implicit animation helpers for XAML, and so these just let you easily, as you toggle visibility of elements or move them around, get these nice fluid animations just by adding a little bit of XAML here. And then we have our little XAML panel here. You can actually just change things on the fly. So if we wanted to make this a blue square that's a little bit larger instead and see how that behaves, we can modify that over here quickly and just try things out. We have connected animation helpers, so if you're doing any page with lists, you can kind of get some nice fluid connected animations here easily with just some tagging in your XAML. And one of the other widely used controls in the toolkit is our drop shadow panel. So we have a lot of nice effects. A lot of samples have these kind of property panels that you can play with and just drag sliders around. And then when you move over to the XAML, it'll keep all those properties, so you can just copy and paste this into Visual Studio. So a lot of power here just to see what's available in the toolkit. If you're doing any multimedia apps, we have another couple of contributions from the community here on eyedropper, image cropper. So any and what we have here is just the tip of the iceberg. So to end things off, I just wanted to talk a little bit about our plans for this year, so we can switch back to the deck.
All right, go ahead and I will go ahead and share it.
Thank you.
All right, we're on.
Perfect. So these are kind of the rough plans. Things kind of always evolving with the toolkit, but this is kind of what we have in our minds at the moment for 2020. We'd like to do our next release for 6.1 in May, so it'll be a minor release, but it's packed filled with features. It's really just a minor release because it's going to contain no breaking changes. And so we're hoping to do that in May, probably near the end. I'm still figuring out the date. Obviously, build is in the middle of May, and so we're going to work around that a little bit. So probably sometime after build. The big part of that release is going to be the tokenizing text box, which is control that we've been working on for a while that slipped out of our 6.0 release. So that's one of my main goals and drivers is to get that finished for that release. We also have some great community contributions. So we have some items repeater layout, so a wrap layout and a staggered layout from Sean, as well as some more .NET Standard APIs related to kind of parameter checking with guarding, making sure you're getting the right parameters to functions, as well as some high performance APIs. So if you're doing anything that really needs to fine tune the performance of .NET, these things will help. And those are from our community member Sergio. And so some really great stuff in this release coming. So we're really excited about putting this together for next month. Sometime later, probably, I'm guessing August. We haven't really nailed down time for the 7.0 release just because we haven't really finished planning it, but it's going to be a lot more about cleaning up, optimizing things, getting things ready for the future, making the toolkit a little bit more easy to consume. But we also have better XAML island support. And so one of the big things there is we switched from dispatcher helper, the dispatcher in the core window, to the dispatcher queue, which is the new methodology. So if you're not using dispatcher queue, you should start investigating that, and that'll just help you with the transition forward. It's something that you can use today. It's not going to break anything, but it does make it easier to leverage any components that you're building in XAML islands or WinUI in the future. So the toolkit's made that transition, and so that's going to happen in the 7.0 release. So you shouldn't see too many changes from that, but it's going to, there are slightly different behaviors. So that's why we're making it a break and change, and that's one of the bigger things in our 7.0 release. And then finally, near the end of the year sometime, we want to basically have the toolkit take the WinUI 3 dependency, so that way everything in the toolkit can just work on top of the WinUI 3 platform. And this is really going to help the toolkit move forward. This is going to help minimize our testing requirements across all these different OS versions, because now we just have a single stable base of controls. It's going to help us improve the existing controls and take all those updates that have happened in WinUI and just be able to leverage those within the toolkit itself or anything we use from the platform. So we're really excited about moving the ecosystem forward and helping everyone transition to WinUI and having the toolkit and on all these controls and helpers we have just work on top of that is going to be really exciting.
All right. Well, awesome. Thank you so much. I think that is all of the content that you had, right?
Yep. No, thanks,
Okay.
Anna. I really appreciate being here, and I'm sticking around for questions too. So if there's any questions on the toolkit or how we work with WinUI, I'm happy to answer those after.
Yeah, definitely. Michael, thank you so much for running us through everything. That drop shadow panel was really cool, I have to say. That definitely caught my eye. For business, we have some demos from WinUI 2.4. So these are exciting new features that will be included in an upcoming pre-release package within the next few days. We have a stable release coming at the end of April. So while we have these things in pre-release, we would love your feedback on anything that you find with these controls. So the first demo we have is Hierarchical Navigation View, and we have a developer from our team, Dilip, who is going to demo that for us. So let me switch back to Teams, and Dilip, you can go ahead and share your screen.
Hello, everybody. My name is Dilip, and I'm a dev on the controls team. Some of you may have seen me around on GitHub under the alias OGD. Most recently, I've been doing some work on Navigation View. So to give some context, previously, the Navigation View was capable of displaying a flash list of items in its pane. However, it is a common scenario for apps to want to present users with a hierarchical navigation tree. So I'm here to show you a quick demo of the new feature we introduced, adding multi-level menu capability to Navigation View, also known as Hierarchical Navigation View. This change was made in two parts. First, I replaced list view with items repeater in Navigation View, and then leveraged that update to introduce hierarchy. So first, I just want to give a quick overview on the shift of moving Navigation View off of list view to items repeater. Before these changes, Navigation View was dependent on the list view control in order to display the items. This presented some difficulties when implementing top Navigation View when it was being built, and it presented similar problems when I first started making changes to add hierarchy. List view did provide us with a lot of free behavior, such as selection. However, there was a lot of list view behavior that did not easily fit within the requirements of navigation view functionality, for which we had to write some workarounds, such as, for example, the movement of items in top navigation view. With this in mind, we decided to move navigation view to use items repeater, which would require us to implement the free functionality that list view provided, but would also provide us with a lot more control over the implementation. So I replaced list view with items repeater and leveraged the existing selection model class in order to keep track of selection state. This made the implementation a lot more straightforward. An example of this is now we have a selection model as a source of truth for our selection state, which stays the same no matter which mode navigation view is in. Now let me talk about hierarchy. After the repeater update was completed, I implemented multi-level functionality. Here are some screenshots of the current implementation in order to give you some visual idea of what I'm talking about. You can see how items can now be nested and how they're displayed in different pay modes, with the nested items being displayed in a flyout whenever the navigation view is in left compact or top over here. You can see we populate the top level items, same as before, just by placing navigation view items under the navigation view.menuItems property. Similarly, now you can also add children items to each individual navigation view item by just placing them under the navigation view item.menuItems property. And in this manner, as you can see here, you can actually nest items multiple levels deep. Now I'd like to draw your attention quickly to the data binding example over here. In this scenario, you can see we bind a collection of categories to the menu item source property. Just to give you a quick background on the category class, it defines 3 properties: name, icon, and children. Children is a collection of other category objects. So here, back in XAML, what we do is we define a data template which creates navigation view items. So we bind the name of the property of the category to the content of the navigation view item, and we bind the children collection to the menu item source of the navigation view item. So through this manner, we can achieve nesting. So to wrap things up, I just want to give you a quick demo of how this looks like in XAML controls gallery. As you can see, while before each item navigated to a page where you could navigate to some sub-item, now this can be done by simply hitting the chevron to reveal a list of children items, and then you can just navigate directly to the desired page. And here's just some animation. When you close a parent item, you can see that the selection indicator here indicates that there's a child that's being selected. Similarly, if you still want to navigate back to the parent's target page, all you have to do is just invoke it. And then just to show similar behavior in left compact, where it comes out as a flyout, and then similar behavior in top navigation view, where it also comes out as a flyout, and then you can navigate to the page you want to. Yep, this has been my quick demo of the new Hierarchical Navigation View. Thank you guys for listening. I'm now going to hand control back over to Anna.
All right, great. Thanks so much. That was awesome. We love to see progress on navigation view, especially in the XAML controls gallery. It's a lot easier if you can just, go in and click the items rather than having to navigate to a whole other page just to get to where you want to go. But now I'm going to hand it off to Karen, who is another dev on our team, and she is going to demo a ProgressRing. So Karen, you can go ahead and share your screen and get started. Yes, we can.
Okay, perfect. Hey, so I'm Karen. I'm also a developer on the team, and so far I've been working on progress controls, and specifically for 2.4, I've been making updates to the ProgressRing. So this is an example of the ProgressRing in the XAML controls gallery. So as you can see here, it has been updated to more fluent style, unlike what is in Wux before. And the property, the isActive property, toggles it playing and then not playing. So this is so that it is also backwards compatible with Wux, so the APIs are the same. So what's different about the ProgressRing is that implementation-wise, it is implemented with Lottie animations. So that's an open source library that natively renders After Effects vector animations. So a little bit about After Effects is that it's an Adobe tool by designers mostly to create motion design. And then specifically for us is that After Effects will output the animation into a JSON, and using Lottie CodeGen, it'll output it into a composition animation in C# or C++. So the benefits of Lottie is that you can have cool and complex animations, unlike storyboards, and there's a whole community of open source animations online to reference, and it's also more performant as well. So yeah, I can now show you the implementation. So as you can see in the template, all it really has is an animated visual player with the source as the indeterminate progress ring. And then toggling back and forth from active and inactive basically hides it and stops the player. So as for implementation, all it really takes is this progress ring with the as active property bound. And then this is just to show a sample of what the Lottie output is. So this is the indeterminate progress ring. It's auto-generated. And finally, I want to show, so I want to show that the color binds work as well for this Lottie implementation. So you can change colors, and it changes accordingly. So that. Oops. Yeah, and that is done through theme binding, color theme binding with Lottie CodeGen. So right here, as you can see in the code, ProgressRing indeterminate has an ensure themes property and get themes property, and that kind of sets it in code. And yeah, I think that's it for my demo.
All right, great. Thanks so much, Karen. That was really cool to see, and also just really cool to see how our team is using like this, like Lottie. It's definitely a step in the right direction. So I am going to go ahead and share my screen again so I can demo a Radial gradient brush. So here it is. Obviously, there's not much to demo live, but Radial Gradient Brush is an exciting new control that we will have in WinUI 2.4, and it's something from WPF that I know there's been a lot of requests for, so we are really excited to bring this to you guys. So this is a XAML controls gallery right here, as you guys have seen in the past two demos. But here we have Radial Gradient Brush with default relative and absolute mapping models, the corresponding XAML, another example of it, and then these cool sort of 3D looking examples where you are setting the spread method property to pad, reflect, or repeat. So yeah, that's really all there is to show for Radial Gradient Brush, but we just want everybody to know that it is coming, so get excited for it, I guess. So now I am going to go ahead and switch back to Teams because I think it is time for Q&A. So I will stop sharing my screen, and Savoy, I will hand it over to you to get us started on the Q&A here.
Sure thing, Anna. Let me go ahead and get my camera turned on. All right. Thanks to all of our presenters and demoers. That was awesome. We've had a lot of good questions come in, and I'll try and prioritize the ones directed at Michael and Ginny, just to be sure that we can hear from them while they're joining us for the call. So Ginny, if you're here, first question goes to you. We'd love to know where you found that Windows 95 sweater.
Donna Sarkar, I think, is the person I should credit for the sweater. She sent me an email before Christmas time last. What's your size? And where's your address? And all of a sudden, there it was. Love the sweater. Love the sweater.
All right. So if Donna gets like 100 DMs and emails, we can direct her to this section of the community called Let Her Know Why.
She's the one.
She's okay. Cool. And another question for you, Ginny, a little more serious. Terry Cox would like to know, which MVVM toolkit, if any, were you using? And what's the plan for fitting the observable collection changes?
Oh, great question. I don't know if the answer is it's great, but I didn't use any toolkit at all. I'm using very simple MVVM in my applications. As it turns out, the Windows Phone version, the Silverlight version of this application was the very first XAML application I ever wrote, at least for production. So I've edged my way into it slowly, and I'm not using any of the toolkits. But there's no reason why you couldn't. They should all.
Ginny, not sure if it's me, but you seem to have cut out. Can anyone else hear Ginny?
Yeah, I think we lost you there, Ginny.
All right, Anna, I'll let you message Ginny to see if we can get her to reboot and join us. In the meantime, I'll take a question for Michael Hawker. So Michael, I saw you answered this in the chat, but it'd be great to hear a little more live. Tim Hainwich asked, how do the WinUI team and Windows Community Toolkit team draw the line between what types of UI resources are to be developed and released as part of each product?
Yeah, thanks, Savoy. I kind of mentioned this in the slide briefly, but maybe I didn't make it as clear. Your team on the WinUI and myself as the maintainer, even though I work at Microsoft, we're on completely different teams within Microsoft. And so I work for a team called PAX, which is Partner Analytics and Essential Experiences, and we're really about working with partners and kind of figuring out. We maintain that Microsoft engages with that work on Windows. And so that's kind of my role at Microsoft as a maintainer of the Windows Community Toolkit, is kind of help direct the project in those directions of kind of what's needed by our partners and seeing what the community needs and directing that way versus your team, which is kind of getting more direction from the platform itself of Windows and devices and what they need to make just things work, right?
Perfect. That sounds great, Michael. One more question for you. Terry Cox is asking, I may be jumping the gun, but what's the Windows Community Toolkit's plan for WinUI and .NET 5? Yeah, I assume they mean WinUI 3.
Right, exactly. And so I touched on that a little bit with kind of my 8.0 release bullet. But yeah, our plan is to embrace the WinUI 3 platform and make a version of the toolkit that runs on top of WinUI 3. We're basically planning just to migrate everything on the toolkit to WinUI 3 rather than kind of maintaining two separate versions, just because that takes more resources. But we want to help move the ecosystem forward and make sure everyone has a great experience with WinUI 3. And so we've already been working closely with your team on making sure that we provide feedback on how this transition is going and that we've been testing things out. And so we've been doing a lot of work there and just already playing with the alpha and a lot of the stuff in the toolkit already just seems to be working. So we're really happy with that. And so we want to get more involved as things move forward. And then that's part of the work we've been doing for the 7.0 release. I kind of mentioned the dispatcher queue change over the regular traditional dispatcher. Like all those are parts of things that we're doing not only to help XAML Islands, but help the transition to WinUI 3 moving forward as well.
Perfect. Thank you very much, Michael. I'm going to take some. Yeah. Oh, and you wanted to give a shout out to your coding live stream. Was that right?
Oh, yeah, Anna did my introduction, and that was part of my introduction spiel, so I forgot about it and glanced over. But yeah, I've been doing coding streams on Tuesdays and Thursdays. I have my schedule up on my Twitch page, so you can follow me on Twitter or find me on Twitch pretty easily. I'm just the Zamalema. And I've been doing a lot of streams, either dev work related to the stuff I'm working on for the toolkit, or even just planning and going through PRs. So lots of different types of things, but all related to the Windows Community Toolkit and the work that I'm doing to drive that forward. So it's been really great to engage with the community there and really work through some problems together, or be able to, when you can review a pull request from someone's adding a feature when the person who added the feature is actually there and chat with them, it makes a huge difference. So that's been really cool to do on stream. So so please feel free to join me there.
That's awesome. And it looks like we have Ginny back. Ginny, welcome. I believe you dropped while you were answering the question about MVVM frameworks.
Oh, right. As it turns out, I am not using any framework at all. I'm doing just very simple MVVM in these applications. but any MVVM framework should work just fine with the fix for the test observable collection. There's support for behaviors too, I believe. I just haven't tried them out.
Okay, cool. And with that, we'll take some questions for Miguel, who's joining us on the call. Now, Miguel, the question I want to ask you comes from, where was that here? I think it's this one from Luke Blevins. And Luke is asking, Miguel, can you talk a bit more about why WinUI desktop apps won't use core window? Do these separate code paths provide a decent enough method to abstract away the differences between the traditional window design versus core window, i.e. caption buttons, size removal, extending content into title bars, etc.? Finally, what role will App Window play in this once it becomes a component of later WinUI 3x releases? I assume it will follow the same principles as described in the relevant design spec.
Very good question. Well, why are they using core window with it to do? Well, because core window is a concept created for core application. Is when we create core window, we thought that it was going to be good enough to having just one window in the same screen, using all these Metro design, Windows 10 design, where everything is going to be touched. The thing is, we make the decision right now to leveling up the SAML Windows class, so you are no longer going to worry about are you using core window or HWin. You're going to have this high-level class that is going to abstract you from all these low-level APIs. So this is the plan that we are thinking, and the first step is this new window class that is going to consume HWin or core window for you. The app window, the question is, yes, maybe we are going to reuse the app window in the future because we want to support multiple windows in the same UI thread for UWP app mobile. So, well, maybe something that we are going to reuse, but it's all going to be always from the level of the XAML Windows class. You are not going to worry about using app window, core window, or HWin. That's the plan. It's very ambitious, I know, but this is the direction that we are taking right now.
Cool. And so Nick AC asks, is there a demo for WinForms in WinUI 3?
WinForms in WinUI 3 means this is a XAML Islands scenario. We don't have a demo yet for WinForms in WinUI 3, but it could be done soon. The thing is,
while we're on the XAML Islands topic, let's take two more for you, Miguel. So first, Nick ACPT asks, I'm really curious as to how they're going to pull off support for both WinForms, WPF, and UWP at the same time. Hope it'll be possible to just drag and drop controls around.
Drag control for, this is another XAML Island scenario. Drag control means that I have my toolbar in here, I have my canvas, and it comes to drag control inside of the XAML designer canvas. This is something that you can do today with the WPF control. You can do it with the WinForms control as well. And if you have only UWP application, you can do it as well. The thing is, when you mix all together in just one XAML Island scenario, this is not going to be possible for.
Is asking regarding WinUI controls on WinForms and WPF. Will they be visible at design time like a normal control?
Not for WinUI 0.0. Not for WinUI 3.0. No.
All right. So Ryan, here's a question for you. Martin Anderson is asking, in app and host backdrop acrylic, what is Microsoft's commitment on keeping it, supporting it, and extending it with Windows 10X, 10 Xbox, etc.? Is there a scope to come up with alternative fallbacks than just a solid color? What about passing through the desktop wallpaper?
Great question. So I guess there's maybe two parts to that. The first one is sort of what is our commitment to support that? I think the answer to that is really simple. Acrylic is a pretty central piece to the Fluent design language, and we want to support it. So there's no sort of long-term plan to drop or move away from acrylic or anything like that. It's really just a question of timing. Can we get something in for 3.0 versus 3.1, which would ship probably 4 months after 3.0. In terms of what are we on path for, it's a very timely question. We actually have a series of meetings, one today and then another one tomorrow, where we're going to start raising this question about is there some reasonable fallback thing that we can do for acrylics. So I don't have the answer at this very moment in time about where we'll end up in 3.0, but the community, has been, I think, really loud and clear that they care about acrylic a lot. They really want to see it done as fast as possible. And if we can't have sort of true background acrylic, then they want some sort of an alternative, that is acrylic-ish, that does a pretty good job. So we're exploring that. We're actively exploring that now. So, I hope that answers your question.
Perfect. And so, Ryan, another one for you from Weitz Handler asking, would appreciate any input validation with UWP, WinUI, or Windows Community Toolkit. Any word on input validation?
My understanding is input validation is still on path to be done in 3.0. Stephen Kerbach, I saw, was on the YouTube chat. He might be able to confirm that in the chat. But I maybe don't understand the part about the Windows Community Toolkit. Are you asking if there's some crossover input validation Windows Community Toolkit thing?
I think they're asking whether they'll be getting input validation from any of these components.
Yeah, we're planning to have that feature as a capability for 3.0.
Cool. I'll take a chance to answer one real quick. So Rufan, known as ZHUXB711 on GitHub, is asking, I just want to know when the issue I raised can be resolved. It's been a long time since I raised it, and there's been no corresponding fix, and they're linking some of the teaching tip composition bugs. And we just want to take a second to let everyone know that almost all of our dev resources are hard at work working towards WinUI 3, and we're running on fewer people than normal due to the COVID-19 pandemic. This teaching tip bug is a composition bug that's being actively investigated, and we've had several bug investigations and fixes done by the community members. We want to take a moment to thank them for their enthusiasm and support and understanding as we all work towards this together and make sure that everyone here gets WinUI 3 on time. So another question that I'll direct to Ryan. This one's coming from Marcel, who's asking, since currently acrylic brush with host backdrop is not available with WinUI 3 Alpha and won't be in the release of WinUI 3, would it be possible to allow the usage of...
I'm not sure the answer to that question. I think I'll have to follow up. I don't know whether that is a technical limitation or not. So I'd have to get back to you. But I'll reiterate what I said earlier. Even though, like, I've previously stated that we're not currently on path to have true background acrylic for 3.0, and that's a true statement. But we're also trying to figure out ways to, like, you might call it fallback plans or some sort of plan B that gives a pretty reasonable solution, because the great community that we have and all the customers that we talk to, like when we said that, we've gotten just an overwhelming pile of feedback that have said, please come up with something. And so that's like a pretty high priority for us to explore.
Fabulous. And so Dory Milanovic is asking, which new controls can we expect in WinUI 3?
WinUI 3 is still a little bit away. We have some new people who are joining my team, some new program managers that are going to be looking at least one new control. We're also going to have everything that WinUI 2 is adding. So even though WinUI 2, continues to march on, all the features that make it into WinUI 2 will also be in WinUI 3 when we ship. But we're looking at, so there's a really strangely worded or strangely titled issue in our repo right now, which is called long-lived status messages in applications or something. I see Savoy smiling. He's looked at this one before. Yeah, Savoy worked on this. But really, it was kind of like the idea of having this sort of information bar type of thing that there's potentially other features that we might go and add between now and November. So, but really, when we make new features, we're not really targeting them. Many of them we're not targeting at WinUI 3. We're actually targeting them at WinUI 2. So the things that we bring online for WinUI 2 all get put into WinUI 3, and then there might be some sort of buzzer beaters in November that we also do before 3.0 comes out.
Cool. So we have 5 questions left I have here on the sheet, and just a couple of minutes. Let's see if we can do a little bit of rapid fire on these last few. And I'll take a moment to also call out, there's tons of team members answering questions in the chat. So if you ask the question and you don't see it being asked here, be sure to check the chat to see if you received an answer from a team member. So Ryan, if we can get through a couple quick ones here. Niels is asking, Anna mentioned Windows and Xbox. Will WinUI apps also work on HoloLens and IoT Core like UWP does right now?
Our plan is to have WinUI work on a wide range of devices and as many as we can get to. But right now, the current plan that we're on is that will be done in sort of a phased way. And we don't really have a ton of insight beyond phase 1. So you can think of phase 1 as like 3.0 that we're going to ship this year. And that one will primarily target desktop class devices, so Windows 10. We're not going to be targeting, or currently we're not on path to target something like Xbox in that time frame, but eventually we do want to have support for all the sort of other devices that fit into that family of devices that UWP has traditionally supported. So that would include the stuff that was rhymed off there.
Cool. And so one question from Pinot, who's asking, some clarity from me. When will UWP/WinUI 3.0 work with .NET Core and which versions of .NET Core? Current version of .NET Core being 3.1, or do we have to wait for .NET 5 at the end of this year? If it is .NET 5 and it's already possible to create a UWP app with .NET 5, will it be possible already to create a .NET 5 app with Preview and WinUI 3.0?
Yeah, there's lots in there. I'll try and tell you the latest on that because I'd say that we're still planning parts of it and some parts are more firm. So first of all, we're sort of from this point forward, we're really not planning to support like quite literally .NET Core. We're aimed at .NET 5. So .NET 5 is the sort of you might say the island we're trying to swim to. And certain lanes are swimming faster than other lanes. For Win32, we even for Preview 1, which we'll be releasing in a month, our plan is to have .NET 5 support at that time in a month for WinUI and desktop apps. So the preview itself would be focused around that if you're a .NET developer for Win32 or desktop style apps. For UWP, I would say it's our aspiration to get to .NET 5 support this when we GA this fall. We're still sort of building out that plan, and there's again the situation that we have where we're fairly resource constrained, not just on the WinUI team, but actually on the .NET team as well. We're trying to sort out whether or not we can get to that point this fall, and those conversations are ongoing. So the eventual goal is .NET 5 it's the future of .NET, and it's what we're trying to move all paths forward to. Whether we hit all of those at once for 3.0, I think is being figured out.
Cool. So last 2 questions, I'll ask them really quick, probably a little bit of short form here. Greg Ingram asks, he says he's excited about WinUI and where it's headed and looks forward to RTM. He'd like to know if we'd consider attaching more issues to milestones to help him better understand what's going to be offered and what will be considered complete for each release. He also wants to know what high-level things are being considered for 3.0, such as controls, VS tooling, maybe something that can be included at MS Build as a treat.
Man, I mean, I think that's a really reasonable thing to want, and we don't have that put together right now. I mean, we do milestones for WinUI 2, but for WinUI 3, yeah, I think it would be interesting to start trying to chunk that up. The challenge that we have here is it is still pretty early. It's April, and it's like many months away before we ship 3.0, and then trying to, like 3.1 will ship at the end of March 2021, which is like almost a year away. So I would say the only concern I have in trying to chunk things up into milestones is I wouldn't want to do that in a way that comes across as it being firmly committed, because there's really, it's not likely that we can like firmly commit that we're going to have, say, Xbox support in 3.1. Like, it's just too far out. Maybe some things that we're considering doing in 3.1 and couch it that way. That's a really reasonable request. I'll noodle on that. Thank you.
Sweet. And last question, real quick. Luke Blevins and Terry Cox are both asking, what's our stance on documentation? Will we see updated docs that reflect the change from UWP/Win32 combined into a Windows app topic? And is there anything that they can do to contribute to these docs before they're published? Perhaps WinRT, Win32, and .NET should be introduced better in docs that reflect this change. Or is there anything being done to bring elements of the newer WinUI, such as rounded corners, updated acrylic, and fluid animations, to inbox apps like settings and various shell services? So a little bit of a two-part there, docs and are we surfacing our new features?
I might get you to restate the second applications, and you'll also hear a little bit more about this at Build. And so I think our docs will move in that direction. I don't have enough insight as to how quickly that'll happen, and I'm not sure anyone really fully knows that. So maybe that's a good thing for us to think about. Can we give more heads up on how docs are going to change over time? Sure. If you want to get involved and help, though, maybe fire off a tweet at me or something like that. Send me a DM or something so we can talk about it, because there are ways to go and get involved there.
Cool. And last question, when will settings and other shell experiences switch over to using things like rounded corners?
Yeah, good question. I don't have
of them here from the chat, but you can always reach out to our team members on Twitter, GitHub, or the UWP community Discord if your question wasn't answered or if you have more to ask. Until then, we'll see you next month where we'll be taking more questions, and I'll turn it over to Anna to close out the call.
Yeah, thank you so much. Thank you to all of our team members for being awesome and answering questions on the call and on YouTube. We appreciate all of you, as well as everybody who presented and our guests. You guys are amazing. And of course, our community, thank you for joining us, bearing with us through choppy video and all of that. Hope everyone is staying safe and healthy, and we will catch you guys next time.